Hi and welcome back to the channel. My name is Nicole with morningchores.com. Today we're going to discuss why your laying hens may have stopped laying eggs, whether it's decreased drastically or they've completely stopped altogether. I'm going to go through the common reasons why hens may stop laying eggs, and then I'm going to discuss what's going on with my chickens behind me and what we plan on doing about it. If you're new here, we would love for you to stick around, hit that subscribe button. I've also got lots of links in the description box below of videos as well as our website at morningchores.com. Check that out. If you're a seasoned viewer, welcome back. Today's video should be very interesting. If you have backyard chickens, you may have run into this problem of why are my chickens not laying eggs? The whole reason we have laying hens is so that we can get those beautiful, golden, delicious eggs that we can eat for breakfast or use in our baked goods. So it can be really frustrating when they are not laying the amount of eggs you need to feed your family. So let's go through those top reasons why your hens may not be laying as many eggs as you'd like. The first reason that your hens may have stopped laying or at least reduced the amount of eggs they're laying per day is the feed. If you have suddenly changed their feed or maybe you're not giving them a proper diet, it is very important that laying hens get at least 20 grams of protein a day. Protein is very important because they need that to lay the eggs. So if you're not giving them the proper nutrition that they need, you might want to rethink your feed or whatever else you were feeding them to make sure they're getting a well-rounded proper diet. The second reason is daylight. Hens need daylight in order to lay eggs. Now, I actually put this to the test last winter, but last winter I did not use a heat lamp at all because I had read that the heat lamp was not really necessary for egg production. So I put it to the test and I found that the only time my hens reduced the amount of eggs they laid was when there was a drastic temperature change. So for example, maybe it went from 45 degrees down to 20 degrees, and it would take them about 2 to 3 days to adjust to the temperature, and then they would start laying their normal amount of eggs. Same thing in the summer. I noticed in the summer, if it went from 70 degrees to let's say 85 degrees, they wouldn't lay very well for about 2 to 3 days, and then they would adapt to the temperature and start laying again. So for me personally, I don't really find the daylight thing to be true. It's more about the drastic change in temperature. But I would encourage you to do your own research because a lot of information tells us that when you don't use a heat lamp in the wintertime, they will lay less eggs. And that may be true overall, but in my experience, I did not see that. Reason number 3 is illness. If you have an illness going through your flock or there's something fishy going on with their health, this might be a reason that they're not laying as many eggs. And a good indicator of health is check the color of their combs and their wattles. They should be a bright, vibrant red. So if they're pale, they're probably not feeling too well. They'll also be more lethargic. They'll kind of just want to lay all day. These are other good indicators that something's not right with their health. Next reason is stress. Stress can be a very good cause for not laying as many eggs. For example, if you add a few new extra hens to your flock or a new rooster, that can cause stress in the flock and they may not lay well for a few weeks until they at least adjust to the new friends in their flock. Another reason could be that maybe there was a predator that, tried to infiltrate your fencing area or your coop, and that may put them on edge for a couple of days. So always keep in mind of what's going on with your flock from a social standpoint with the other hens as well as predators that might be in your area. Another reason your hens may have stopped laying is they have gone broody. So instead of laying eggs, they're sitting on eggs and preparing those eggs to become baby chicks. So that's an exciting and a good reason that a hen stops laying. So just keep a watch on your hens. If they're sitting on the eggs all the time, that's a good indicator that they're broody. The next reason is it may depend on the breed you have. So before you buy your chickens or your baby chicks, you want to research the different breeds because some breeds will lay more eggs than others. So this is another thing to keep in mind, especially when you're starting off with those baby chicks. Another good indicator that your hens have stopped laying eggs is that they're going through the molting process. Molting is where your chicken will lose its feathers. This usually occurs in the fall and it will last 2 to 3 months, and during this process they'll grow new feathers. So they're spending all of their energy growing new feathers instead of laying eggs. Now, the first molting process for your hen usually happens around 18 months old. give or take. And when the hen is in its first year of egg laying life, they will lay an average of 20 dozen eggs in that first year. Then they go through the molting process, and when they come out on the other side, they will lay an average of 16 to 18 dozen eggs in that next year. And then each time they go through the molting process, they will lay less and less eggs. I talked to one of my local farmers that sells eggs as a business, and they told me that they only keep laying hens for 2 years. That is their optimal laying life. And then once they get through the 2-year process, then they process them for meat. So you kind of have to look at your chickens a little differently when you're using them for food. You kind of have to cross that line of they're no longer a pet, they're now a commodity, and you have to take in consideration the cost of feeding them and is it worth it, and we'll talk a little more about that later in the video. And the last reason that your hens may not be laying is age, and I kind of touched on this with the molting, but as your chickens get older, they will lay less and less eggs, and this is very dependent on the breed. I have one chicken that's a Rhode Island Red, and she'll be 6 years old this spring, and she was still laying this summer. Now I don't think she's laying anymore, so that's something we have to consider, but she has been rock solid. But I've had other hens where they've really only laid in those 2, maybe 3 years, and then they're kind of done. So it really just depends on the breed, so do your research when you're choosing your chickens. So what's going on with my hens? Well, I think I have 2 issues going on. The first issue is that they are old. I have a hen, as I mentioned earlier, who's going to be 6 years old this spring, and I don't believe she's laying anymore. I think she laid some this summer, but I'm not 100% sure, but I definitely know she's not laying them anymore. We also have some hens that are in the 3 to 4 year mark, and then I have a few hens that have just, or they'll be finishing their second year of egg production. So all of them are coming out of that peak 2-year production. My second issue is I do believe some of my hens are molting. A lot of them have lost some feathers. We've noticed in the coop there'll be a bunch of feathers, and you always want to make sure there wasn't a predator in there, and I checked all my hens and they were perfectly fine and healthy. They're just losing their feathers, and you'll notice in the footage that some of them are missing feathers on their backs. Now, not all of them are molting, but a good number of them are. And my molting process began back in October. So if it's supposed to last 2 to 3 months, I have at least till the end of December before I may start seeing egg production increase. So now the question is, what should I do? Should I keep my hens through the winter, continue feeding them, and see if after the molting process they will lay a few more eggs? Because right now we're getting 0 to maybe 1 egg here and there. Like, I'm lucky to get 3 eggs a week, which is very low. I have 11 hens, so I should be getting a lot more eggs than 3 eggs per week. Or I can have them processed. Basically, that means I take them to a butcher and turn them into meat. And this is where, as I mentioned before, where your chickens, you have to kind of stop viewing them as a pet and view them more as a commodity. And this can be difficult if you're new to having animals, especially farm animals like chickens. You have to kind of cross that line where, you know, it costs money to keep these animals on your property and to feed them and maintain them. So then you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? So that's the question that my husband and I sat down with. Is it worth it to continue feeding them, using electricity to keep the water warmed up so it doesn't freeze, you know, buying bedding, and then I'm having to buy eggs because I'm not getting enough from my hens. So is it worth it to do all that this winter, or just pay the money to have them processed? So we sat down and did a bunch of math, and I worked it all out, and I took into consideration, if I keep them through the winter, how much it's going to cost to feed them, the money I'll spend on bedding to keep the coop clean, the amount of money I'll spend on electricity to keep the water heater going. Now, we don't use it all the time. Like today, it feels like spring. It's 60 degrees out here, so it's not plugged in. We only keep it plugged in when it's really cold, so I did take that into consideration. And then I also took into consideration that I'm still having to buy eggs, even if I keep them through the winter. So with all of those costs added up, I am going to spend $265 this winter keeping these chickens. Now, if I get them processed, and this price is going to vary where you live and what processing company you go with, or if you do it, if you do it yourself, it's a lot cheaper. But we just don't have the equipment to do this many at one time. I can do 1 to 3 at one time, and I could span it out and just do a few at a time. But I called a local processing plant, and it was so cheap that I just felt like it was worth it to just take them all at once, have it done, and then I get in return whole chickens that I can put in my freezer. So the cost of having them processed, and this also includes buying eggs through the winter. So if I buy 1 dozen eggs per week through the winter and I have these chickens processed, I'm going to spend a total of $130.62. So I have $265 to keep them alive all winter, or $130 to have them processed. So it's definitely saving me money to have them processed, and that's what we decided to do. Which that just means we'll have a fun video in the spring where we'll get new baby chicks, and we'll be able to share that experience with you guys. We do already have several videos on baby chicks and how to set up a baby brooder. I will put that link in the description box below. One extra bonus tip: if you are not sure if one of your hens is laying or not, you can always separate her. We keep an extra dog kennel around, and we'll put that in the garage, and we'll just put an extra feeder, a waterer with some bedding, and we'll separate that hen and put her in the dog kennel and just keep her there for a couple of days to see if she lays an egg or not. It's a very simple, easy way to determine which hens are laying and which ones aren't. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you found it helpful and interesting. We would love to hear in the comments section below if you have backyard chickens. What have you experienced with egg laying, and when production slows down, what have been your reasons? We would love to know. You can also take the time to head over to morningchores.com. There's all kinds of information about chickens over there. So I will also have that in the description box below. Hope you guys have a wonderful week, and we'll see you on the next video.